Hi guys, I'm back with the solution of the last problem and of course with a new one. So let's start with the solution of the previous problem. So the question was, where was the black king 2 moves ago in this position? And we know that the game is monochromatic and it's white to play at the moment. Okay, I recall that monochromatic means that a piece which starts on a black square must stay on black squares, and a piece which starts on white square must stay on white squares. Okay. So we're gonna analyze this. Where was the black king 2 moves ago? And we know that it's white to play in this position. So black just made a move. What was the last black move? Well, it's obviously not with these 3 pawns because they are at their starting place, so they didn't move. So it's the king or the pawn. We have like 4 options, I would say. The king could come from c6. We can already remove the king a8 to b7 and king c8 to b7, because if the king was in a8 or in c8, actually the king was in a double check, which was not possible from right. Let's say the king is in a8, okay, but it's in check by a rook in a6, but also in check by the queen in g8, and there is no legal move for white to make this 2 checks. And it's the same if the black king was in c8, it would be in check by the bishop in h3 and by the queen in g8, and it's not possible to actually make a legal move to administrate this double check. In c6 it's possible, because in c6 the black king would be in check only by the rook in a6, not by the rook in c3, because remember that the game is monochromatic, so this rook is going only on the black square, and so this rook is not making a check in c6 in a monochromatic game. Okay, so if it's a black move, if it's a black king move, it's c6, b7. But we have also 3 other possible moves: d7 to d5, or c6 takes in d5, or e6 takes in d5. Okay, we're gonna remove the 3 pawn move, and we're gonna show that the last move was effectively king c6 to b7. So it's really easy to see that the last black move is not d7 to d5, because if the last move was d7 to d5, it's not possible for the black king actually to reach b7, because the black king started in e8, so he couldn't leave the place e8. If he made the castle, it's only on the king side, because it's not allowed to castle in the queen side in a monochromatic game, because the rook in a8 would arrive in d8, so it's not possible. So it would be a castle there, and again the black king should be in g8. So it cannot be d7 d5, because if it was d7 d5, the black king should be in e8 or in g8. Okay, so we have only 2 possibilities: e6 take d5 or c6 take d5. In both cases, it means that this pawn made actually 2 captures, to go in e6 or c6 and then to go in d5. We're gonna see that this is a problem actually. So here we have something to see in this position. This rook in a6, we can say it's a little problem. Why? Because this rook cannot be the one which started in h1. Let's see. In h1 you can go in f1, you can go in d1, you can go in b1, you can go in b3, you can go in b5. As you can see, you can go only on the half of the white squares. You can never reach the even rows if you start in h1. So it means that this rook, which is actually in a6, is a promoted one. Okay, so it means that the pawn, which started probably in c2, had to reach something like a8. So let's see how it's possible. Imagine you have a pawn in c2. Okay, you can move in c4. Then you need 4 captures. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, is it possible to do this? Actually, what are the pieces that you can take? You can take this pawn, the pawn b7. You can take the rook, a8. You can take the bishop, c8. You cannot take the pawn d7 because he's still on the board. You cannot take this pawn because they are there. You cannot take the king in e8. And you cannot take the knight g8 because in monochromatic games the knights are not moving because it's not possible actually. Okay. And so it means that you also captured en passant another pawn. So let's imagine you make c2, c4, then you have like a b7, b5, you take in b5, then you have a7, a5, you take in a6, then you have a bishop in b7, you take in b7, and then you take the rook in a8. So it means that you take the 3 pieces on white squares there, plus a pawn en passant. This is how you can be promoted. And now we have our problem. Because if the pawn in d5 made 2 captures, what are these captures? Okay, so it's not the pawn in c2 because we know it's promoted. So it could be the pawn in e2. It cannot be the queen because the queen is still there. It cannot be the bishop in f1 because it's still there in h3, and it cannot be the knight started in b1 because the knights are not moving in monochromatic games. So it's the rook which started in h1. So it means that this pawn took the rook that started in h1 plus the pawn that started in e2 or c2, but it's not important. Okay, so first the rook that started in h1 can go in d5 but cannot go in e6 and c6. So the rook was taken there in d5. But then it means that, let's say that the pawn which started in e2 was taken in e6. So to reach e6, you need to go in e4, then to take something in a5, and then to take something in e6. So it could be possible to make the second capture, because it could be played e7, e5, and you take en passant, so you reach e6. But what is the first piece that you could take on d5 or on f5? There is no piece to be taken there, because we know that the pawn that started in c2 was promoted in a8, took already everything which started on the white squares. So it's not possible. So actually the pawn in d7 came from, this pawn in d5 came from d7 and didn't make 2 captures, because the position would be not legal. Okay. So it removes the possibilities that d5 came from c6 or e6. So the last black move is defiantly the king c6 to b7. So let's put the this was the position just before the last black move. It's really easy to see what is actually the last white move, because actually the black king is in check. So it means that white had to play this rook to make the check. Well, it could be also a piece in b6, but then since this piece is not anymore on the board, it would be b6 to b7, and then black take b7, but it's not allowed to go from b6 to b7, so it's not possible. So it should be rook a8 to a6 check. Okay? It should be rook a8 to a6 check. Now again you have this question. Is it just rook a8 to xc check, or is it rook take something in a6 check? For the same reason, we know that this rook cannot take something in a6, because for the same reason we have actually no black pieces that started on white squares that could be taken in a6, since the pawn c2 took already everything to be promoted in a8. Okay, so this was the position just before the last white move. And now, since the question is, remember, where was the black king 2 moves ago? What was the previous black move? Well, for the same reason, it cannot be d7 to d5, and it cannot be e6 to d5. So it's a black king move. 3 possible. If it's king b5 to c6, you can see that the black king would have been in check. But then, how white made this check? It was not with a to a4, because you have a king in a3. So it was with pawn b3, take something in a4, check. And again, it's not possible, because for the same reason, we know that there is no black pieces that could be taken on a white square at the moment of the game. So this is not possible. So you have 2 moves, king b7 to c6 and king d7 to c6. If it was d7 to c6, you can see that the black king would have been in check by the bishop. But the last white move couldn't be the bishop, because there is a pawn in g2. And it couldn't be like a bishop f5 to h3, because the black king would have been in check before the white move. So only one possible move is possible. It means that you had a rook there, and the rook goes in c6 and black take. But again, we have a problem, because the rook in c6 could be in e4, could be in e2, but couldn't be in h1. So this rook cannot be the one which started in h1. It means that it would be another promoted rook, which is absolutely not possible. So the last black move cannot be king d7 to c6, and so it must be king b7 to c6. So 2 moves ago, the black king was actually in b7. Well, I hope you enjoy this one. It was pretty nice, I guess. I really like it. I will let you with another one. Let's see this new puzzle. The puzzle is create an illegal cluster from this position. You need to add 1 black rook, 1 black pawn, 1 white rook, and 4 white pawns to create an illegal cluster. I actually discovered really recently this kind of problems, and I tried to just create one because it's funny. An illegal cluster is an illegal position that becomes legal as soon as one piece, except the kings of course, are removed. So it means that if you remove one piece after adding these 7 pieces, if you remove one of them, the position must become legal for each of these pieces. So you will have 1, 2, 3, so 10 pieces that you can remove, and if you remove one of these 10 pieces, the position must become legal. So tell me in the comment if you have the solution of this one, and see you soon. Good luck for having this one. Bye bye. Ciao.